What's up, guys? Welcome back to English with the Sings. It's Mr. Singh, and today we're just going to carry on from where Mrs. Singh had picked up. She was really helpful with giving us a quick overview of the play, going from the prologue all the way from Act 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Talking about how this play is not a romantic comedy, but actually a tragedy. Okay, it's a tragic play. And today, what we're going to do is look at some key quotes that I think are worth remembering. So we're just going to go through them today together. You might want to pause this video at some point to take note. Maybe you want to make some flashcards and write things on the back of them. But ultimately, we're just going to look at some key quotes that we think could be really helpful for your revision. So let's just start with the prologue. Enter the chorus. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona. So we know this is set in Italy, in Verona, where we lay our scene. From ancient grudge, break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, and this is going to be a very easy quote to remember. A pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. So in the prologue, before the story even begins, we are told as an audience that Romeo and Juliet will commit suicide because of this ancient grudge. And that's, these are, foes, these two families, the Capulets and the Montagues. So really easy quote to remember there. A pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. You could talk about whose misadventures piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of death-marked love. This is a death-marked love, and the countenance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end naught could remove, is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage, the which, if you with patient ears attend, with what here shall miss, our toils shall strive to mend. So ultimately, this is a poem about two people who are in love, Romeo and Juliet, from two different households, the Montagues and the Capulets. And ultimately, we know this is a play about conflict. And we can see here that quote is really powerful. A pair of star-crossed lovers take their life. The word star-crossed, has links to fate and destiny. Okay, we know those two things for theme there could come up, and death-marked love as well. We can see an easy quote there, which can also link to fate and destiny. So in the prologue, that could be an easy quote to remember, that a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, which means there's going to be conflict, violence, suicide, bloodshed over this ancient feud. When we move on to Act 1, Scene 1, we can really see that conflict coming to life with Tybalt. He says, "What art thou drawn among these heartless hinds?" It's a rhetorical question. These heartless hinds. Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death. So Tybalt is a saucy boy, as described by Lord Capulet, and he is looking to fight. And Benvolio, interestingly, is a peacekeeper. He says, "I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it, to part these men with me." Benvolio's asking Tybalt to, let down your swords, let's calm down, let's not get in a fight. And Tybalt responds with, "What drawn and talk of peace?" Once again, rhetorical question, talk of peace. "I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee. Have at thee, coward." This is a fantastic quote to remember. The easy part you want to pick up on is, "I hate the word as I hate hell, all Montagues." So you've got that repetition of hate. We know that Tybalt is a violent character, the Prince of Cats. We know this guy is talented with the sword. And in Act 3, Scene 1, we know the tragedy really does emerge with, as what Mrs. Singh said, the peripeteia. Okay, so that's a really key word to look at there. "I hate the word as I hate hell." We have violence, death, and conflict that really comes about in that quote there. There's a few that show up for love and passion. When we think about Romeo and Juliet, there is obviously that theme of love that is in the play, and we see a lot of that. We know that Romeo is feeling very melancholic when his love is unrequited for Rosaline. And then, of course, his brother, his friend rather, Benvolio, brings him to this Capulet party. And Romeo says, "Did my heart love till now? Forswear its sight, for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night." That's probably the most important part to remember. Did my heart love till now? Forswear its sight. You've got yourself a rhetorical question. Here, Romeo is so madly in love at first sight that he is denying his own senses. He's in denial of his senses. We can see here that actually Romeo falls in love with Juliet at the Capulet party there. Moving on in the same scene, Act 1, Scene 5, you have what's called the Holy Palmer's Kiss, a really powerful moment where we get some stage directions where Romeo does end up kissing her. It's really important to look at how Romeo tries to persuade Juliet into kissing. Then move not while my prayers effect I take, thus from my lips, by thine my sin is purged. Romeo is saying how, he is a sinner and Juliet is this holy redeemer of sin. It is in some ways blasphemic. He almost idolizes her and worships her. And Juliet is a little bit reluctant. You've got to remember at this time, Elizabethan women shouldn't be found with Elizabethan men on their own. And they've obviously kissed here. Then have my lips the sin that they have took. She's talking about how she has now taken away Romeo's sin. And Romeo is so madly infatuated that he goes, "Sin from my lips, oh trespass sweetly urged, give me my sin again." Very easy quote to remember there. My sin is purged, give me my sin again. Romeo is seen as this obsessive lover. We know that in Romeo and Juliet, William Shakespeare is, exploring how, being very rash, running into marriage after meeting somebody for a day, falling in love with the opposite household, and breaking away from your family's expectations during this time period. There are consequences here, and obsessive love leads to tragedy. So we see here, "Give me my sin again." We know from our understanding of the Bible that with sin there is a price to pay, and for Romeo, sadly, that is death. And Juliet obviously does feel the same way for Romeo. She says, "You kiss by the book," and she thinks that their affections are harmless. But we learn later on in the play that it's not so. We see Juliet feeling, in love with Romeo, and that same sort of obsession, that obsessive love, takes place in Act 2, Scene 2. Some of us will know it as the balcony scene. And she says, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo?" She's not asking where he actually is, but she's actually asking what is this whole Montague? What is Montague? This idea of household names. She's questioning this, this societal norms of conflict between those families. And we know there's consequences there. Once again, we have that rhetorical question. She's looking for Romeo. And actually, Romeo is in the distance there, and he's paying close attention to Juliet. And this is when he goes, "It is in the east, and Juliet is the sun." We have a metaphor there. Juliet is the sun. Really interesting connotations of the image of the sun. The sun, as we know, provides, warmth, sustenance for the harvest. It provides life. He is idolizing Juliet as something which he needs to survive. And he says, "Arise, fair sun." He calls her the sun again, "and kill the envious moon." She is, without, Juliet is out of Romeo's reach. She has this celestial significance, and he is madly in love with her. And we can see that in Act 2, Scene 2. Romeo declares love, aspiring to reach Juliet there. Really good quote to remember there. Juliet is the sun, and "Arise, fair sun, kill the envious moon." We have this fate and destiny, celestial imagery in their dialogue. Okay, we're going to carry on moving on with conflict and violence. We saw the quote from Tybalt when he says, "I hate how all Montagues in thee." We can see how this quote can be really useful from Act 1, Scene 1. But we know in Act 3, Scene 1, the peripeteia, as Mrs. Singh had mentioned, is really powerful as well. A plague on both your houses. We know this is a curse. As he dies, Mercutio curses both the Montague and the Capulet family, and that gives us foreshadowing into what happens later on. And the friar actually mentions this earlier on. He goes, "These violent delights have violent ends." So he talks about how, you know, this is a gamble. This is a dangerous game to play. And he warns Romeo about his infatuation with Juliet as he was pining over Rosaline 2 minutes ago. And we see here after Romeo slays Tybalt, his brother-in-law, without obviously Tybalt knowing, he says, "I am fortune's fool." So you have that idea of fate and destiny there. So, you know, conflict and violence, these quotes really do transcend across all the themes. Really, really powerful quotes to remember. "I am fortune's fool." We can see how Romeo is feeling as if he is messed up there. Moving on to death and tragedy, we know this is also a theme that is very powerful. It does show up. Thus, with a kiss, I die. Romeo obviously doesn't get the communication that Juliet is only presenting as dead and not really dead. And Romeo dies. We can see there, "Thus, with a kiss, I die." And Juliet reciprocates this when she awakes and finds that Romeo is actually dead. And she says, "Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath, there rust and let me die." "Oh, happy dagger" is a very easy quote to remember, and "let me die." Juliet takes her own life, fulfilling the prologue in earlier discussions, talking about how the foreshadowing of their death concludes. And the prince also, when we talk about death and tragedy, the prince says, "For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo." That is the final line of the play, and we know that it concludes their tragedy. And of course, something really interesting that may come up is this idea, this theme of family and obedience. We know that Juliet is a bit transgressive. She goes, "Deny thy father and refuse thy name." She questions the importance of names and family loyalty. And this really angers Lord Capulet, as Mrs. Singh mentioned. He says, "Hang thee, young baggage, disobedient wretch, out." And Capulet explodes when Juliet refuses to marry Paris. And we see that in Act 3, Scene 5. Here, Juliet is breaking those norms and expectations, as her father would usually be the one to decide who she marries. And she is being transgressive and going against that. So there's many ways you can use these quotes. We're going to look in the next video with me on how to perhaps use those quotes in an essay question. There is an essay from 2017, right about how Juliet, how she's presented at different points in the play. Of course, you want to show good coverage. So in the next video, we'll look at how to plan and how to write and how to use those quotes and zoom into them as well. How to write analytically. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and share this with your friends who may benefit from some revision on Romeo and Juliet. Thanks. Bye-bye.